I Speak the Truth. Episode 2. Why Now? I need to begin with a quotation from Dr. Martin Luther King. The time is always right to do what is right. When I retired from electoral politics in 2014, I decided to enjoy my retirement on the farm. However, the development of the Dominica Labour Party was first and foremost on my mind. I wanted to assist in the implementation and bolstering of the party structures which were deteriorating island-wide. I submitted the proposal to the Prime Minister, who commented that the idea was a great one. I never heard from him again until 2017, when he called to beg me to take up a position as Ambassador of Dominica to Cuba. During my 6-year tenure in the Republic of Cuba, the Prime Minister visited the communist country on an average of once per year. Mark you, many of the visits I was not privy to, some were unannounced and others were informed through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Cuba. Every time he came, I embraced the opportunity to discuss with him the revamping of the Labour Party, inclusive of organizing the delegates' conference. As usual, he nodded. When he visited in 2019, I again reminded him and gave him $5,000 to assist in the process. A press conference was hosted by Ed Registe, Vince Henderson, and Ian Douglas to inform the public of the delegates' conference about 3 days preceding the event. All delegates came to the delegates' convention, but to their astonishment, the activity turned out to be a launching ceremony. What a sham! The question is whether the 3 panelists were or were not aware of the political leaders' betrayal and disrespect for laborites. When he visited again in 2022, I reiterated my plea, but it fell on deaf ears. From this moment, he began to avoid me, not responding to telephone calls, not acknowledging letters, and not responding to WhatsApp messages, especially if the subject matter was related to politics. This was enough evidence to justify that the PM did not want to discuss and implement my idea of fixing a date for the delegates' conference. From 2014, he has been employing the delay tactics deliberately, primarily to prevent a senior member of the party from being elected as deputy leader. His eyes were cast on Vince, but he was out of state for most of the period, and moreover, he was not an elected member of parliament. To facilitate Vince to become the deputy leader in order to succeed him, the opportunity arose when the sad transition of Ed Registe occurred. Vince was forced on the Grand Bay people, who were well qualified to represent their constituency. Pierre Charles should be turning in his grave because his Grand Bay people, whom he loved so much, were trampled upon and disrespected. Lo and behold, the PM had a change of heart, proceeded to promote Dr. Irvin McIntyre to the Ministry of Finance, hence exposing a novice in such a delicate, difficult, and challenging position. It is now quite obvious that the family who can't associate themselves with the Labour Party and clamoring for a change of name is definitely earmarked to be the next Prime Minister of Dominica without going through a delegates' conference. This is actually the display of the hegemonic and dictatorial tendencies of the political leader who continues to undermine the democratic principles and structures of the Dominica Labour Party. The thorny question is, can anyone utter her dissenting voices in his presence on those matters? No, he will crush and humiliate anyone who attempts to oppose him. That's the monster Labour Party created. To ensure that his strategic plan is well executed, he convinced the senior members of the party to retire, disempowered them politically, and returned them to their substantive positions. This is laughable. Hence, his plan will pass through unhindered because there will be no one capable enough to oppose him. Enough is enough. As I have told you Laborites, no man is indispensable. Whenever your leaders make mistakes, they shouldn't be applauded. A wrong cannot be a right. Our responsibility is to correct the wrong. In conclusion, let me again quote Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I came to the conclusion that there is an existential moment in your life when you must decide to speak for yourself. Nobody else can speak for you. Next episode will follow soon.